So hello fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And today I looked at a gun control or a gun advocate. Someone who has a program on the NRAtv, Colion Noir. And he was, I wanted to listen to what he was saying because I saw a Joe Rogan clip, those GRE clips, where he was talking about, was it John Oliver, right, who had done an NRA piece and had not included him being one of the more if not most, popular players or people who have shows on NRAtv. And he thought it was because John Oliver was being disingenuous, and he didn't want to show any strong gun advocate proponents on his show. And that's the reason why he didn't show anything from this guy who has 3 programs, as far as he says, on NRAtv. So I went and I decided, let me take in the whole program, the whole podcast from Joe Rogan. And one of the first things I'll say, he had a strong point coming towards the 3/4 mark in the episode. And I thought, okay, you hit your stride at this point. You're speaking very well and you're making some solid points. But I just wanted to say that because at the close to the top of the show, maybe, within the first quarter, at the quarter mark of the show, he just made a flub that kind of made me lose respect for him, that had to come back later on, where he said something like, 30-something thousand people, he said that people who wanted to reduce guns were saying, and I thought he would have corrected himself, that 30-something thousand people get killed by guns in the U.S. every day. So I know it to be every year. So I was like, okay, he's going to correct himself. He's gonna say that it was every year, and okay, it's not that bad. Well, he didn't. Maybe he was going to. Maybe that was the plan. But he didn't. Joe Rogan asked him at some point, and he said, he doubted the numbers when he heard them. So he went digging. And Joe Rogan asked him, okay, why did you doubt them? And he said, because that sounded kind of inflated. So I thought, okay, yeah, now he's going to reveal that it's in a year. Well, no, he didn't. I think he kept saying day a couple more times. And then Joe Rogan picked it up and said, because he was saying that, okay, most of gun deaths are suicides. If it's 33,000 people who get killed by guns every year, 22,000 of that are suicides. And then he was going into, Japan has more suicides. That's something I have to look into myself. I believe Japan has a high suicide rate. And he was saying, well, look, if guns are so dangerous, then we should have more suicides than Japan, where having a gun in Japan is really difficult. So I think that was a good point. But the flub was that, Joe Rogan started saying it because he's talking about the 60-something%. And he's like, 18,000 every day? That's so much, 18,000. And then Joe's, I guess his everything guy, his producer, his everything, steps in and says, that's really a year. And then Joe is like, wait a minute, where did I get that from? And then, Mr. Colion Noir, which is his name, I don't want to, it just seemed like he put everything on Joe Rogan. Like, oh, Joe, there you go, mixing up numbers, conflating numbers. And I'm like, he got that from you, not 5 minutes ago. You're the one who, maybe you had a path where you were going to say, yeah, and then I figured out it's every year, and I was like, what? But he got that number from you, And then Joe Rogan is like, but where did I get that? Why would I say that? And the guy does not fess up. Now, I don't know if he realized that it was him who made the mistake. I can't say conclusively. But number one, to forget that you're the one that said it not a couple of minutes ago, like 4, 5, 6 times per day. And then when Seth picks it up and Jamie corrects him, then you're like, oh, Joe, it's all on you. Oh, and not say anything is like, okay, that just made me lose a lot of respect for him. I didn't have any because I don't know who he was. But yeah, that didn't sit too well. But like I said, and towards the end, he started, dispensing with the numbers. So, number one, as he already said at the beginning of the program, 2/3 of the people who get killed by guns are suicides. I don't know that makes it any better, but as he pointed out, in Japan, they have more suicides, and they don't even have guns. That said, though, Japan, in my opinion, has a really horrible work-life culture, and they have an honor system. I don't know if it's as bad as it is in Korea, where you're supposed to honor your elders and people who are in higher positions, and you bow more low than the other person. If you're the boss, you practically just nod your head when you meet someone. If you are the cleaner, you're gonna bow from the waist and make yourself horizontal. So, and that's in Korea and a lot of the other places. When I look at some, like, what's that, Asian Boss, or some of these other shows, I see that people leave the office after their boss or their senior leaves. And that oftentimes can be 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And then they're coming back at, a normal hour in the morning. So basically they just go home to sleep and then they come back to work. They can't spend much time with their families. In Japan and Korea, the kids, especially before university, after school, they go straight to an academy to learn. I say all that to say that comparing American suicides to Japan is like, you're looking for the worst of the worst to say, like, okay, at least we're not as bad as they are. I think in some less developed countries, there are much higher suicide rates, but at the same time, life is a lot worse there. And I'm sure the US wants to compare themselves with other developed countries. So to me, comparing yourself, and that seems to be, a common thing. Well, it happened a couple of times on Joe Rogan's show about guns. Now, I have to say, even though I have been on the range and I've shot weapons a number of times and I've been in the reserves, if, guns disappeared completely, like if we could uninvent them, I really would not have a problem with that. I wouldn't, because guns are meant to shoot people. That's what they're for, to shoot people. They make it easier to kill someone, And I feel like, and like I said, I feel like that's what the gun advocates, they cherry pick information. Like, let me give a couple more instances. They'll say like, okay, well, cars kill people too. Look at that, that guy who killed all those people in France. Or was it Germany? I don't remember. Maybe it was both. By running into that crowded area, and he killed like however many people. And then they'll say stuff like, yeah, but nobody says let's ban cars. Or I think Joe himself brought up the fact that, in London, some year, they hit more murders. They don't have any guns in London, well, legal guns, and they hit so many more murders for the first time ever than New York. And that's another one. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but let's see, what we have here. In order to say that, and one of the things that both Joe and Colion Noir say is that, yeah, I want to defend my right to have guns. All right, and they come across. They basically say, yeah, that's my position. I have to say that is my position. Everything, my arguments come from that fact that I'm interested in protecting the Second Amendment. And let's look at it. We're talking about Japan, that has some of the highest suicide rates in the developed world. That's who you're comparing your suicide rates against in order to say that it's not the guns. 1 year, London had a higher murder rate than New York. And 1 year, not for decades, just 1 year. And that's what you're comparing it against. Guns are specifically designed to kill people, whereas trucks and vehicles are not. And so one terrorist, or even if, let's say, in 1 year there were a spate of terrorists that decided to do that, guns have always, throughout the history of time, yes, some guns have been used for hunting. I'm sure they are not pistols. Pistols and handguns are not made for hunting. They're made to shoot other people. How do you compare something that has like a vehicle? A vehicle isn't designed to kill people. All right? Most of the time, you'd be really hard pressed to be able to kill a number of people with a vehicle. In a very special circumstances, like there was in Germany and some of these other places, you can kill that many number of people in one go. But normally, you're not going to have hundreds of or thousands of people at the side of the road to kill people with. And plus that, trucks and cars have a primary use, which isn't to kill people. So to cherry pick like that, it strikes me as disingenuous. I mean, it's basically like they're drowning and they're grabbing every bit of, anything that they can find to say, no, look at this, look at that, look at something else. Now that said, I have to agree. I don't know that I think Joe's definitely said it. Joe Rogan definitely said it. He said 33,000 a year, that's not that much. And it isn't. It isn't that much. Really, it's about the same number of people who overdose on opiates. But yeah, it's not a lot of people. It's 33,000 a year. I mean, I know I did the calculation recently. Maybe maybe about 200 something. Yeah, it could be around, it's in the hundreds of people a day. When you consider that the US has 320 million people, no, it's not a big deal. When you compare the fact that 400 and something thousand people die of smoking related illnesses in the US every year, yeah, that's a bigger number. That's a more important number, really. And if we're being honest, I mean, I don't want to be flip, but it's a number that we can ignore, honestly. Because between smoking and obesity and other probably preventable illnesses, maybe alcoholism, I don't know how many deaths there are per year due to alcoholism. I probably should look it up. But it doesn't strike me that, to be honest, the mass shootings, it's like, what's his name? The scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying. People, it grabs the headlines. It's unusual. But honestly, if we started having, mass shootings in the US every other day, it would be like the opiates, what you call it? All these people overdosing on stuff. Yeah, that was exciting. That was in the news. Now, not so much. We don't really care about it as much, and it's not in the news anymore. Or, for example, the Me Too movement. Absolutely, that was burning it up. But it's not as much anymore. It's kind of like Ed Sheeran. I remember when Ed Sheeran had a couple of tunes that were just playing back to back to back, and now not so much. Or when Miley Cyrus had a bunch of songs that were playing. Yeah, we kind of forgotten about it. Just like we've forgotten about, people, how many people die of the flu every year. Or we don't really think about smokers every year who are dying. It's not really a big deal. And even if, they were managed, let's say they banned all the guns right now, it wouldn't help as many people as if half of the smokers in America stopped smoking. I guess that's a harder one to get to. But anyway, overall, I kind of have to agree with the gun advocates. It isn't that big a deal. It may sound really horrible to say, but there are much more important things that can make a difference to more people's lives than wasting a lot of time on things that don't relatively kill that many people. They don't. And yes, it's worse to have, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are wounded and paralyzed and have all these other issues. So the people that die, it's not just them. But still, as compared to smoking or obesity or any of these other things, it's not a big a problem as we make it out to be. But anyway, I'm sorry that I know this might be a controversial position to hold, but the numbers, and this is, I have to say, if it were me, like I was in control, I don't know that I would be able to have that psychopathic ability to just make it execute it the way that I'm saying it. It's easy to say what I'm saying. It's not as easy to execute it and have to deal with the pushback and everything else. It's not as easy to have a whole bunch of people look at you after there's a school shooting and you're focused on these, 5, 10, 20, 25 kids or people that have been killed, even though you've saved 500 lives every day for the last 2 weeks. When you see these 20 people who were killed in such a dramatic way, all those lives that we have not listed, those people whose names that we can't point to, look, I've saved these 500 people and these are their names. It's hard. So, but anyway, guys, have to end somehow. Wish me lucks or not. You can like or unlike. You can comment, share, and or subscribe. Peace.